Don't get in Captain Keith Colburn's way because he is on a firing spree. After firing Greenhorn Connor in last week's episode of Deadliest Catch, the man in charge of the fishing bustle Wizard was once again willing to let go of anyone who made any semblance of a mistake or demanded power. First it was Connor and his bait switch and disrespect. This week it's deckhand Calvin for his mistake, demand for an authority position, and the blatant disrespect for the FV Wizard captain. Once again, Captain Keith's temper was on full display, but following his medical emergency from Season 20, everyone is on high alert when he acts out. Even the other captains are aware not to rile him up. With Captain Keith continuing on the tear, his flare-ups could lead to a costly game-changer should he push himself too hard. With a history of rage, the higher the likelihood that he could damage his body in the process as well. Deadliest Catch's Captain Keith had an outburst that was actually warranted. Though much of the drama and action occurs out in the Bering Sea, sometimes it's what happens at the dock that garners some heated exchanges. Improperly docking a vessel can be costly, so after Calvin's mistake on deck, it was right for Captain Monty Colburn to call the atmosphere a stress factory. For whatever reason, Colburn's crew had been less than exemplary. If we believe what Captain Keith has stated, the unproven crew had raised red flags, and it was time to make another change. Upon calling Calvin into the wheelhouse, the deckhand hurled excuses at the captain for his mistake of typing off the bow of the ship, riling him up in the process. Being talked back to is a surefire way to get yourself dismissed, but the icing on the cake was the deckhand stating that if he were paid more for a position of authority, he would take on that responsibility. First it was $7,500, and then it suddenly jumped to $10,000. Stemming from Connor's disrespectful antics, inability to haul a single pot this season, and his former employer not even remembering him, Calvin was not a victim of a casualty, he was a fraud out of a job. At least he gave him $2,000 for a plane ticket home. But the saga didn't end there. When Calvin hounded Captain Sig Hansen for a job, Sig called Keith's brother instead, fully knowing it would cause Keith to snap, allowing Monty to be the buffer in between. Captain Keith was unwilling to eat an $850 plane ticket, so he was on the hunt for the man bothering every captain in Dutch Harbor. By the time Captain Keith tracked Calvin down at the airport, threatening to revoke his plane ticket, we were once again witnessing Captain Keith put his job before his well-being. Though Calvin's parting words were, "See you later, you fucking maggot," Keith got the last laugh. But this display makes us wonder, at this point, will Keith even make it to season's end? Deadliest Catch's Captain Keith Colburn has a big temper. Though a celebrated captain, it's become predictable that Captain Keith's rage and temper are at the forefront of his story during every incident. It's good for entertainment, but this is reality television, and the reality is it's taking a toll on him. Keith terrified fans last season with his stroke, and no one wants to see him suffer, but his continual action of putting himself in these high-risk, blood pressure-boiling situations will be his health downfall. The fact that Captain Sig knew he couldn't approach his fellow star about Calvin is a bad indication of where Keith truly is. That said, we should give some credence to Keith for his ability to simmer down a tad compared to his usual outbursts. All eyes are on FV Wizard to see if Captain Keith has truly learned from his past. He has the ability to be an inspiration like Captain Jake Anderson and put his health and well-being first.